What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Kids Talk Sports Podcast. And on today's episode, I'm going to be reviewing some of my March Madness picks that I made for the first and second round. And I'm going to be reviewing some games from the first and second round and seeing how my picks did. So I think this is going to be a very interesting episode. I'm going to be breaking down 3 to 5 games from the first round and 3 to 5 games from the second round. And then I'm going to give you an upset prediction, a hot take maybe for the Sweet 16, heading into the Sweet 16 to see maybe what team could get their hearts broken in the Sweet 16. So let's get into this episode. And then at the end of the episode, I also have another question of the week for you guys and shout outs to people who answered the question of the week. So I'll shout out you guys. So stay tuned till the end of the episode to see if you get a shout out. So let's get into it. So the first game we're going to talk about is the first round 8 versus 9 matchup, Michigan State versus Mississippi State. Michigan State had everything they needed to make a deep run. If you watched the game in the second round, clearly that did not work out. But Tyson Walker had 19 points, shot 50% from 3, and he also had 3 rebounds and 2 assists. He had a great game. Tyson Walker always shows up in March Madness, even when they're getting blown out, like in the second round against North Carolina. He was the leading scorer in that game still. So, Michigan State had a bunch of seniors. 4 of their 5 starters were seniors this year, so that's not going to be good for them next year, but that would have been good for them this year, for them to maybe make a deep run, because they had the depth, they have the skill to make a deep run, because all of their starters almost returned except for Joey Hauser, who was a senior last year, and I don't know where he is now, but they lost their shooter. Jaden Akins kind of turned into their new shooter, but he just didn't show up in the postseason, didn't show up in the Big Ten tournament as a shooter a lot. That's why they lost to Purdue. And he didn't show up in March Madness as a shooter either, which they really needed that. But Michigan State did have all the pieces they needed. They had depth, they had skill, they had coaching, they had everything they needed. They had experience, everything they needed to make a deep run. But they did lose in the second round. But they did win 69-51 in this game. They came out firing. It was unstoppable for Mississippi State. Could not stop them. I think there was a part in the second half where it was like the 18-minute mark to the 14-minute mark, and every single team scored on a possession back to back. No team could stop it. And Michigan State was up by 12 at that time, so Mississippi State could not come back. On the Mississippi State, Josh Hubbard had a really good game with 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. This Mississippi State team could have been dangerous. They definitely could have been dangerous. I thought if they could have won this game, they probably could have upset North Carolina, as they upset Kentucky, but clearly we just saw that Kentucky was not worthy because they got upset by Oakland. But Josh Hubbard again, 15 points, a great game by him, but Michigan State, the offense was too much for the Mississippi State defense. So Michigan State wins 69-51, and they advanced to play the number 1 seed North Carolina, who eventually beat them by 16. We have one of the second 8 versus 9 matchups was Nebraska versus Texas A&M, and this was probably one of the best matchups. Before the game started, this was probably going to be one of the best matchups of the first round. It was a pretty good matchup, but I thought it'd be a little closer than a blowout. Texas A&M blew out Nebraska 98-83. Texas A&M scored 100 points on Nebraska, but this game had so much scoring. There was, I think, 180 something points scored. It was 181 points were scored this game. And for college basketball, that's absolutely crazy. That's actually insane. But on the Nebraska side, Keisei Tominaga, who I talked about when I made my predictions, I did take Nebraska this game, but clearly that did not work out. Keisei Tominaga had 21 points, 5 for 11 from 3. Again, good 3-point shooter. 2 rebounds and an assist. But on the other side, Texas A&M had a better shooter. Wade Taylor had 25 points. He went 7 for 10 from 3, shooting 70% from 3. That's absolutely insane. And 5 assists. And Texas A&M moves on and defeats Nebraska 98-83. Nebraska's defense just couldn't stop Texas A&M. Wade Taylor was way too much for them. Just pull out from 3, drain every time. 70% from 3 is absolutely outrageous. But yeah, The A&M offense was just too much for the Nebraska defense. And then what I think was the biggest upset of the first round, at least, or of the tournament so far, I think. Oakland over Kentucky, 80-76. This was a crazy game. Shout out to Jack Golke. I saw a stat. He shot over 300 3-pointers. This season, he shot over 300 3-pointers, and he shot 8 2-point shots. That's right. He shot 8 jump shots. He shot 8 shots inside of the 3-point line. He shot I think it was 327 shots outside the 3-point line. And clearly that paid off because Jack Golke went 10 for 20 from 3. Every single shot he took was a 3, and he had 32 points. 10 for 20 from 3, he had 30 points off of 3s and 2 points off of free throws. Every single shot he took for a field goal was a 3. He just come off the screen, boom, 3-pointer, done. And they come off another screen, boom, 3-pointer. And Jack Golke was actually going crazy. And Antonio Reeves kept Kentucky in it for a while, 27 points, 5 for 9 from 3, and 3 rebounds. But Oakland looked like they could be dangerous, and then they advanced to the next round to play the red-hot NC State team, and they lost in overtime, which we'll talk about that game in the second round section. But Oakland defeats Kentucky 80-76 in the 14-3 upset. And then we got another upset. James Madison defeats Wisconsin. Now, I don't think this was a really big upset because a lot of people thought this could go either ways. I picked James Madison, but a lot of people were thinking this could go either ways. These teams are really even. So, for James Madison, Terrence Edwards had 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. James Madison was just absolutely going crazy. Their defense was way too much for Wisconsin's offense. And James Madison's offense was just rolling in the first half. I think they were up by 12 at halftime. Wisconsin just couldn't score. Their best player kind of got injured a little bit, was limping. He did come back. But Wisconsin looked good after making it to the Big Ten championship and almost defeating Illinois. And then they got first rounded by James Madison. But James Madison did end up getting absolutely obliterated by Duke in the next round. On the Wisconsin side, Max Klesmit had 4 rebounds and 2 assists and 18 points. So shout out to him. He had a really good game. So to review the first round games, Michigan State defeats Mississippi State. Nebraska loses to Texas A&M. Oakland defeats Kentucky, and James Madison defeats Wisconsin. And now, for the last section of this episode, we've got the second round games. So the second round game we're going to talk about is Creighton versus Oregon. This game was a heck of a game. This may have been the best game in the second round, or maybe even the tournament. That Oakland game was pretty good. This game was a heck of a game. Creighton wins 86-73, so the score doesn't look like it was a close game. But this will tell you that it was a close game. Creighton defeated Oregon 86-73 in double overtime. That's right, double overtime. So they went into the first overtime and so they were tied after the 40 minutes. And then they go into the first overtime and they're still tied. Then they go into the second overtime, and that's when Creighton broke through. I don't think Oregon even scored in the second overtime. I think maybe they scored 2 points. I think it was 71-71 at the start of the overtime, and then either Creighton outscored them 15-0 or 13-0 or something. I don't know. But Jermaine Couisnard for Oregon had 32 points with 8 rebounds and 3 assists. This guy's going to be special. 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. And in the first round game against South Carolina, he had 31 points. He's a great 3-point shooter also, so I think he's going to be a really special player. Stephen Ashworth for Creighton had 21 points, 4 rebounds. 21 points, 4 assists, and 8 rebounds. And that's what won Creighton the game, even though he's not really classified as one of their best players. Ryan Kalkbrenner and Baylor Schreiman didn't really show up, but Stephen Ashworth did, which I think led Creighton to a win. And I think this could lead Creighton all the way to the national championship to maybe make a deep run like that. But again, Creighton beats Oregon 86-73 in double overtime, and that was a really close game. Another close game was Clemson versus Baylor. Clemson defeated Baylor 72-64. Chase Hunter for Clemson had 20 points. He had 2 rebounds and 6 assists. He had a great game. This Clemson team, I think they could make a run to the Final Four. Maybe pull off an upset and get to the national championship. But I think they could make a run to the Final Four. This team is really, really dangerous. On the Baylor side, Rage Dennis had 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. Great game by him. But Baylor it felt like Baylor was neck and neck with them the entire time. They were keeping it within 10 the entire game. And then they just couldn't pull in at the end of the game for like the last 10 minutes. It was just Baylor would score to make it 8. Clemson scores to make it 10. Clemson scores to make it 12. Baylor scores to make it 9. It was just back and forth. But Baylor just couldn't get that stop and go on a run. So I think that's why Baylor did get defeated. So Clemson defeats Baylor 72-64. And in the last second round game that we're going to be reviewing was NC State versus Oakland. NC State wins 79-73 in overtime. This was a matchup between the two teams that upset the 6 seed and the 3 seed. DJ Burns Jr., the big guy for NC State, he's really good. 24 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. He could not be stopped. Trey Townsend, though, for Oakland, the other big man, 30 points, 13 rebounds, and an assist. 30 points and 13 rebounds for a double-double with 30 points and 13 rebounds. I'd say it's a pretty solid. He played good for them all year and showed up for them in the Kentucky game too. Shout out to Trey Townsend and Jack Golke. They both played really, really well. So that's the last second round game we're going to talk about. So to review all these games, Michigan State defeats Mississippi State. Texas A&M defeats Nebraska. James Madison defeats Wisconsin. And Oakland defeats Kentucky in the first round. In the second round, Creighton defeats Oregon. Clemson defeats Baylor. And NC State defeats Oakland. So for this week's cut, I have some shout-outs to give to you guys. So the first shout-out goes to Area, Piper, and Easton. They said, Area likes to watch football and play basketball and soccer. Piper likes to watch football and play basketball and soccer. Easton likes to play basketball and football. And they want to know what my favorite sport is to watch and play. So my favorite sport to watch, if I'm being specific, college basketball, but in general, probably basketball. It has to be college, though. It's either college basketball or college football. I'm going to say college basketball and college football are my two favorite things to watch. Favorite thing to play, baseball and basketball, probably, I'd say. So shout out to Area, Piper, and Easton. Thank you guys for answering the question of the week. The next shout out goes to Dominic, who said they love listening to my podcast. Their favorite sport to play and watch is baseball. Their favorite team is the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he loves that they picked up Shohei Ohtani. It's going to be a great season, and they think that they have a chance to win the World Series. Have a good day, Dominic. So shout out to Dominic. Thank you for answering the question of the week. And the last question of the week shout out goes to Bia and Joe. They said, we love your podcast. Here are upset predictions heading into the Sweet 16. Bia says, Grand Canyon over Bama. Tide is going to get ruled this time. Joe says Texas A&M is going to take it over Houston because Houston is overrated and shouldn't have gotten the 1 seed. And peace from Rhode Island, home of the great Tyler Kulik. Go Golden Eagles. So shout out to Bia and Joe. And for this week's question of the week, what upset are you picking in the Sweet 16? So out of any of the Sweet 16 matchups, what upset are you picking? The upset I'm picking, I've got NC State moving on. I think they might be able to move on, but I've got NC State moving on to the Elite Eight. So what is your upset that you're picking? Again, you can answer this week's question of the week and send in your answer to my email. Again, my email is talksportswithmason@gmail.com. Again, my email is talksportswithmason@gmail.com. So shout out to all of you who are answering the question of the week. And if you want to see the video recording of this episode and previous episodes, go to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is GameWithMase. Capital G Game, no spaces, capital G Game, capital W with, and then capital M Mace. Game with Mace, capital G W and M. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.